industry's point of view for the reactors.
Any other questions?
I guess if you could just elaborate more on the consultation process that they engaged in on that.
Basically, the consultation process itself was limited. For example, it was not possible for interveners to cross-examine the industry spokespersons. That was one problem, so that everything had to go through the panel. And interveners had one shot at a time, whereas the proponents and the Nuclear Regulatory Commission were there day in, day out, all the time. Moreover, if you read the transcript or look at the videos of the presentations, you will see that there's very little distinction between the proponent and the nuclear regulatory in terms of the tone and the argumentation they make. They almost seem like a tag team. They're basically saying the same thing and backing each other up. The CNSC does not ask any really tough questions of the regulator. It's not like a trial where you have a prosecuting attorney and a defense attorney and you see really tough questions being asked. That's not happening. The fundamental problem here is I think is our lack of imagination. Is that when we think about waste, we think, wouldn't it be nice to get rid of it? It's an attractive idea. The problem is we don't really know how. Nuclear waste is not biodegradable. It's going to be around for hundreds of thousands, even millions of years, and dangerous for all that time. So all you really are doing is moving it from one place to another. And the industry has an understandable desire to cut their bottom line and to cut their liability by saying, after a certain point in time, we're not going to be responsible anymore. But somebody has to be. And so more and more people are now saying that rather than abandoning this waste, we should be accepting the idea that you need constant monitoring, constant surveillance until such time as somebody in the future invents a technology which might actually neutralize the waste. But until the waste is neutralized, we have an obligation to keep an eye on it. And keeping an eye on it doesn't mean burying it and abandoning it.
I'll just relate my experience. I testified before the committee. We presented expert evidence on what could happen in terms of malevolent acts during transport. The only time they could listen to us was 9 o'clock on a Wednesday night. After having sat since 9 o'clock in the morning, we presented the information. There were no questions. There was no interaction about it. Everyone was in a hurry to go home. So it's mentioned that we made that presentation, but there was no real serious consideration of what we put forward. They were just going through the motions of letting people come and yell at them and then go on with this decision. They could have just written down the application from OPG and handed it to the minister, because that's in fact what they got. Thank you.
Well, would you like to talk about the change in the Environmental Assessment Act? What took place?
The Canadian Environmental Assessment Agency, before 2012, before the omnibus budget bill, was responsible ultimately for environmental assessment of nuclear power projects. The switch over to allowing the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to take that lead is very problematic in my view. From what I understand is that the panel secretariat was basically housed at the premises of the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. So all the day-to-day interaction in terms of scheduling and making decisions about requests to extend or the hearings were done basically through the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission. And that does not really constitute an independent environmental assessment process.
I'd like to say that our organization, and this does not go for other organizations, I'm not speaking on behalf of the Inverhuron Group or necessarily the Sierra Club Foundation, but our organization has come more and more to the conclusion that ever since the firing of Linda Keane in 2008, Linda Keane was previously the president of the CNSC, and she was fired by the Government of Canada for nothing other than doing her job. She was trying to insist that the regulations be respected at Chalk River, and she was fired. Ever since that time, I think we have, in our view, we've lost any chance of having a truly independent regulatory body. And the message has got out to the regulators that they should just approve things. In fact, when I first met Michael Binder, who is now the president of the CNSC, he told me right across the table, as close as you are to me, that his job, as he saw it, was to streamline the approvals process. He didn't even call it the licensing process, he called it the approvals process. And I think that mentality, that's his job. And we have to recognize that we have a government that created the nuclear industry and has supported the nuclear industry lavishly over many years, has tried to sell nuclear reactors overseas, recently sold a huge uranium contract to India and facilitated that deal. So we have a difficulty here in that there's no real separation between the federal government and the industry. And for that reason, perhaps, the CNSC is not a truly independent body. Now, the problem with the environmental assessment panel being housed at the CNSC for a 3-year period is that it's kind of a question of groupthink. You get into a kind of a group mentality, and that's the prevailing mentality. And what the various interveners may bring to the table are just temporary things that are brought to the panel's attention, but day in and day out, they're interacting with the CNSC. And I believe that it's not that the CNSC is trying to do anything harmful. It's just that the CNSC has an attitude that safety is the responsibility of the licensee. It's not really primarily their responsibility. It's the responsibility of the people they're licensing. And if they can do the job that they want to do and meet all the regulations that the CNSC has put down, then who is the CNSC to say no? Well, that attitude may be fine in kind of when you're just running the business day in and day out, but when it comes to something which has such transcendent implications for future generations, it's not an appropriate model for decision making unless it's supplemented by a very strong input of what we call the social license. You not only need a technical license, you need a social license. And this project does not have a social license. There are 154 different municipalities which have passed resolutions opposing this project. And the Ojibwe First Nation, which is located on the site there, they are unconvinced by all these arguments, and they are prepared to go to court to defend their rights. Because OPG has promised them that they will not go ahead with this project without the acceptance of the Ojibwe First Nation. So we see that they have not succeeded in gaining this social license. And unfortunately, they've developed a kind of an industrial attitude that, hey, we're looking after this, stay out of it. But you know what? That's where we have to jump in. That's exactly our message, is that now is the time. The age of nuclear waste is upon us. The age of nuclear power seems to be declining or stagnating, but the age of nuclear waste is just beginning. And it's now very important for ordinary citizens and politicians who have previously not given this a priority and not considered this to be an issue they have to deal with. They have to roll up their sleeves and get busy working on this issue because future generations are at stake here. This is not business as usual.
Question. The government is recently putting through legislation regarding nuclear liability and increasing it to $1 billion. I'm just wondering how that would fit in with this kind of a project.
Do you want me to talk about that? Yeah. Well, that's a perfect example. You see, basically what the government is saying, the federal government, is that we recognize that you would be out of business tomorrow if you were sued for off-site damages in the case of a nuclear accident. None of your suppliers would even supply the equipment because they could be sued for faulty equipment. So the Nuclear Liability Act is an intervention of the federal government which gives a tremendous freedom to the nuclear industry by limiting their liability to $1 billion. And remember, $1 billion is only a fraction of the cost of a refurbishment of one reactor. It's only a fraction of a refurbishment cost. And the estimates of damages in the case of a major nuclear accident runs into the tens of billions, if not even hundreds of billions. Look at Fukushima, for example. So here is a question where our elected representatives are giving the industry a break without requiring of the industry to locate their reactors far away from population centers, for example, to locate their reactors far away from important bodies of water like the Great Lakes, which could cause incredible economic devastation in the event of an accident. So it's a kind of a quid pro quo where there's a quid but no quo. And they're not demanding anything of the nuclear industry. They're just giving them as a gift on behalf of the taxpayers. Well, it's time for the taxpayers and the citizens to stand up and say, look, we're the ones who have been paying the shot. We demand on having a voice. No taxation without representation. We want to have a say, and I think the verdict is already quite clear. It's unanimous all around the Great Lakes. There are senators and congressmen in the United States, and there are politicians in Canada, such as the mayor of Thunder Bay recently spoke out on this issue, saying there's no way. This should not be going forward.
Thank you very much.